In today's video, we're going to be talking about when could we expect a new all-time high from Bitcoin going forward. We've seen certain tendencies tend to repeat across time, and based on these tendencies, we're going to be talking about how this could look like going forward into the halving, but also after the halving as well. When could Bitcoin rally to new all-time highs? Subscribe to the channel for more videos like this in the future. Like the video if you enjoy videos like this going forward, and let's dive right in. So historically, there has been a very interesting trend line developing across time, an 8-degree angled trend line, which tends to reject price into and before the halving event. We can see in 2016 we had a rejection right over here, and the halving events are the blue vertical lines here. And you can see that this 8-degree angle, once again, this 8-degree angled trend line rejects price, and in 2019 we saw lots of rejection from this trend line for many months at a time, going into the 2016 pre-halving period as well. And so now we once again may have an 8-degree angled trend line develop right over here. We've just revisited it for the very first time in this cycle, 45k. We're still in the pre-halving year, so the candle 3 in the 4-year cycle, but we've already revisited this trend line for the very first time in this cycle. And the question is, do we see a rejection like this, like we saw in 2016, where we upside wicked and rejected into a brief correction for a month or two? Or do we see upside wicking beyond this trend line, even to just upside wick beyond 45k and then pull back? Because the tendency here is that after the halving, we tend to reclaim this trend line. Even though we are rejecting from this trend line initially, we reclaim it as a new support quite easily after the halving event and then rally to new all-time highs. And the same thing can be seen here. After the halving, we see rejection from this trend line, but then we break beyond it, test it as a new support right over here, and that's what this black circle represents, the successful retest as new support, the successful retest as new support. And so maybe after the halving, we have to wait for this trend line to turn into a support once again. And it's interesting to see that we're already slightly rejecting from this price, from this trend line. Of course, if we see a 2019 scenario take place where we do see some upside wicking, that's still well and good. We could see upside wicking going into the halving event. But what if we do and fail to break beyond here and reject ultimately going into the halving? History would essentially repeat itself, especially if we reclaim this trend line as a support after the halving event. And the thing about that is that when we reclaim this trend line as a new support, shortly afterwards we rally to new all-time highs. And this has been the case approximately 215 days after the halving, where we see a rally to new all-time highs. Same thing in the 2020 period as well. 214 days after the halving, we already break to new all-time highs. So 200 days, approximately speaking, after the halving event is when we should expect a new all-time high. And that is from April 2024. Just add 200 days, 215 days, and we'll know when Bitcoin will rally after the halving event to new all-time highs. So that's approximately 7 months, 215 days, roughly speaking. So if we add the 7 months onto April, that gets us to around November 2024. And that's quite interesting because 200 days after the halving event is when we break to new all-time highs. But before that, we should be positioning for a retest of this 8-degree angled trend line. And the price point around that time would be around 41k. So notice how 45k is what this trend line represents at this time in the cycle. But going forward, we'll notice that this is a dynamic trend line. So it represents declining prices over time. And so 200 days after the halving, 41k is where this trend line would reside. And going into this 200 period post-halving, 200-day period post-halving, we should see a retest of this trend line as a support and then launch into new all-time highs in this period. And the thing about that is, if we are to see a new all-time high in candle 4, so 2024 in November, then maybe we should expect some candle like this, because back in the 4-year cycle of the previous 4-year cycle, for instance, 2013 to 2016, you can see that candle 4 was once again the trend reversal year, but we didn't break into new all-time high territory. It was only until the next new 4-year cycle, but the new candle 1, that we broke to new all-time highs. In this 4-year cycle, for instance, we broke beyond all-time highs in 2020, so in the halving year, candle 4. So judging by this chart here, if we are to break to new all-time highs 7 months after the halving in April 2024, then that gets us to November of 2024 to see new all-time highs. So we should probably see more of a candle 4 like this in the new year, where we simply break beyond the candle 1 top of 69k and rally to new all-time highs later in candle 4, and then in candle 1, the new candle 1 in 2025, and essentially the new 4-year cycle by the same token. That would be the bull market peaking year, where we finally see that ultimate bull market top in 2025, later in 2025. So really interesting to see how maybe we can't break beyond this 45k region going into the end of the year. And that makes sense, because the 45k, 46k region is a 4-year cycle resistance. And this is a resistance which rejects price for 3 years in a row. It's in candle 1, candle 2, and candle 3 where we see rejection. But across time in previous 4-year cycles, you can see candle 1, 2, and 3 rejection for 3 years. And also here, 1, 2, and candle 3 didn't even revisit this 4-year cycle resistance. But the job for candle 4 is to finally break beyond this resistance, and we see that consistently in every cycle. So for candle 4 in 2024, we're probably going to see price convincingly break beyond 46k in 2024, and maybe even rally to new all-time highs by November 2024 as well. So we know we're going to see higher prices should history repeat itself, and it looks like history is shaping up for a more stronger candle 4. Instead of, in this case, a stronger candle 4, but a weaker candle 1. So it looks like we're going to be repeating the 2020-2021 phase rather than the 2016-2017 phase. But the key to mention here is that we see 2 years of bull run action. Candle 4 being a bullish year and candle 1 being a bullish year, just like we see over here. So we're setting ourselves up for a bullish year in candle 4 and candle 1, with the, of course, caveat that in candle 1 is where we bull market peak. So maybe we have half a year in candle 1. So in any case, we've had a very bullish year candle 3. Candle 4 is going to be a really bullish year as well. And then candle year, maybe half of candle 1 is going to be the bullish year as well. So maybe we have a year and a half still left in the bull market, which is still pretty incredible. Nonetheless, the 4-year cycle resistance here continues to persist, and in candle 4 we're going to finally be able to break beyond it, and that makes sense that we'll break beyond this 4-year cycle resistance, which is approximately confluent with this 8-degree angled trend line that we break beyond in 2024. It makes sense we'll break beyond there, but of course, in the candle 4 that we'll see develop here, we can't see exactly when could price break beyond 46k. This chart here suggests we'll break beyond 46k only after the halving. And so the first half of candle 4, so the first half of 2024 could be maybe hovering at the highs, maybe some retracement, maybe some pre-halving retracement. And just notice how we do see pre-halving retracement around the halving event. That tends to be the case. 2 months before the halving, we do see quite strong upside. You can see that here as well. So how can we take into account a pre-halving rally that occurs 2 months before the halving, and also take into account a pre-halving retrace, which tends to occur around the halving event, while at the same time taking into account a potential sell side price action, buy the hype, sell the news as a result of the ETF catalyst in January, because candle 4 in 2024 is shaping up to be more of an explosive one, because this time it has two potent catalysts in the form of an ETF and also the halving event. Historically, we've only seen the halving event be in a candle 4, and that's why these 4-year cycles are shaped the way they are, because the halving event shapes these 4-year cycles. Every 4 year we have a new halving event, but in this current and upcoming 4-year, the candle 4 and the candle 4 and the 4-year cycle, we're having two catalysts, the ETF and the halving, and so it makes sense why this could be a bit more of an explosive candle 4 compared to, for instance, 2016, where we didn't have as many catalysts, at least not the institutional fueled ones. So candle 4 is ahead, and we're probably going to break beyond this trend line in the future, most likely after the halving event. Could we see some downside volatility in the 4 months, in the initial 4 months of 2024? It is possible. That would be one of the very last bargain buying opportunities, one of the very last deeper retracement possibilities for price. Could it go into 31k? That would be fantastic. Can we get that? Could some sort of volatility take place? That would be the very last pre-halving retrace before we finally rally to new all-time highs 200 days after the halving into the most parabolic part of the cycle, the green part here. You can see we tend to see parabolic upside in this green post-halving period. Of course, we don't take off right away. We do have a reaccumulation period after the halving event. You can see that here as well. So some reaccumulation would occur after the halving event, but 200 days after the halving is when we'll rally to new all-time highs and really embark on that parabolic journey to price discovery, and who knows, maybe even 100k and beyond. In any case, that's about it for today's video. Subscribe to the channel for more videos like this in the future. Like this video if you enjoy content like this going forward, and check out the top right hand corner video for more. Speak to you soon.